So, last element of our program of the day, introductions. Which were done a little earlier showed that the mining industry is there in terms of connectivity, the demand is there. The adoption of technologies.se is happening quickly. Now, we're going to talk about the offer. Objects must be connected so that the supply can effectively adjust to the growth of mining companies. Hence the importance of the Internet of Things. With Vortex, you get it right. We have built a critical mass of Quebec technologies and connected objects, and our hope is to make them a brand image of innovative SMEs in the Quebec mineral sector. So we have a very diverse panel to talk about it. Entire equipment of IT experts consulting services. First, I will invite you to introduce yourself. David Beauséjour, General Manager of Baseline. So what I'm saying right away, where are we in the cycle? Or do you want later? In value buying, yes, exact. Okay, perfect, tell us about yourself. So I really have a very technical background. A student in actuarial science, a master's degree in computer science. And the rest of us are really in the business of supporting artificial intelligence with my team, which we have trained. Well, Francis Latulippe, I was here earlier. I am still the CTO at Access to Solutions, and the founder's background is also very technical in IoT product development. Small business management too. Benoit Bédard, President of Liquide Innovation, is only involved in the development of technological integration in the mining sector. So product development, particularly in automated inspection and data management. Hugo Gamache, I am the Director of Development at G4 Holding, which is the G4 for HECL G4RD Drilling Group, and my background is in economics. I have a bachelor's degree in it and a master's degree in environmental sustainability. Jean-Philippe Clément, Co-President and Director of Administration, Business Development at Cadence Consultant, a continuous improvement firm in the mining industry. Thank you. Then our objectives. Today, the word IoT is often used in English. Word Internet of Things, IoT, in English. Talk about data from connected objects, and we take it for granted that we understand the ins and outs of these technologies or this reality. So through the panel we do not share with you the experience of what is data valorization. What is data? How can a well-defined piece of data become a product on which we can value it? So it's exploring this universe that is part of our daily lives. With our smartphones, we have completely integrated them. But when you think about deploying connected objects, a world of possibilities opens up. The immense opportunity on which the Quebec mining industry and the sectors, innovative SMEs in the mineral sector of the Quebec PUVent.se position, and become world leaders. We are at the beginning of a new mining era, a new way of operating. And competitive issues will evolve rapidly over the next 235 years. And ILFO.se position now to seize this wave. So let's start with the basics. What is data? It's part of our daily lives. I've already mentioned it, but where does it come from? What does it do for a living? Our panelists have a completely complementary experience on this data. So let's start with the basics. They're the 101 data. What is data if you had to educate someone to explain the business reality of a data? How do we explain it, Francis? Yes, thank you. What is data? I say them. The people in the room probably have a good misunderstanding of what data can be, but the different data that will arrive by very raw, whether it is temperatures, a position, or what, from simple price to individuality. But for it to become pertinent, Quan.se gives the trouble of consulting her. Well, it's something that can evolve into information, into decision-making, so that it serves a purpose. Otherwise, I think Etienne mentioned it earlier, we can collect data for years, it becomes practical. Then we remember that it has just when we have a use case in relation to that. When you talk to me about data, that's what I'm thinking about, and the data is in an operational context, an environment, and it's about understanding this context. These environments, that we can interpret the data to make value out of it. Yes, that's it, otherwise stop and that's it. Benoit, it's a complementary experience on what is data. How would you define data and how do you make it available, accessible? Well, I think the description was very good. But in fact it's really a digital representation of a physical phenomenon, where are able to reference after that in relation to a context, either temporal, time or in relation to a physical context, a particular place. So it's all physical data. And as we used to say a temperature or something other than an image. Here, an image is also a piece of data that is a digital representation of something physical. So it is. I think, that would be the most general description I'll see. Definition of data from the point of view of an information technology expert. Now it's Hugo. If we're going to talk about data from the point of view of an equipment manufacturer, how do you tell us about what data is and how do you integrate it into your business model or? Little bit to bid what has been said. It's important for us as an equipment manufacturer to really take the data, and then transport. That's what it's that can be done to make operations more efficient, to really follow the movement we see in the mind to make operations autonomous. But right away, it starts with the data. Okay, and on your equipment when you talk about data, can you tell me some examples of data that you want to collect? Basically, there are sensors that you are capable of. From Gaji a little bit. You're sorry for the anglicites of the gadget for the forest. It's so that you function as efficiently as possible. So that's the same for drilling. There we find that the drilling in exploration, the diamond drilling. Excellent, Jean-Philippe. We look at the diagram that we share with the screen today, which is all the transport of the data, the 234. We have talked blithely in the previous presentations, but connected devices and data, they are inside the process of operation. How do we actually manage to collect data from connected devices in their mining operational context? Very good question. In fact, we have to build our processes. Must. Mapping these processes to create standards, then having information that is relevant, known to all, so that we can then use them in our systems. Okay, excellent. When we talk about connected devices, we have seen the example of Raglan. So it is mobile equipment that we want to connect to be able to monitor them in real time, possibly teleoperation at first. But also geolocation. It is also fixed equipment such as fans, pumps, Cadence can be connected. Obviously, humans must be connected in order to be able to geolocate them for precisely that. Manage local issues, possibly be able to monitor their state of health. If someone is in distress, we are able to disconnect. What are the technical challenges for a connected object, whether it is a mobile device, a fixed device or a human? Benedict. Well, in fact, YAY has several if you stay in the mining sector, but there is a lot of communication at stake. Sometimes there was talk of an underground mine. Well, you know, the propagation of waves is much more complex. If we're talking about drilling, well, it's a very hard environment. It's an environment in which there is water when there are a lot of vibrations, a lot of heat. So it's all about the environment is really an issue. Then it's also access to energy. So for sure, if we want to go and get data, well, it takes a microcontroller, something that will fetch data. It takes an energy source that allows us to take our measurements, to take our images. Then, depending on where you want to take the connected object, well, the energy available is from multiple sources. Then batteries are not always a good solution depending on the ambient temperature or other. So it's always a challenge to choose each of these elements well. 4. The final goal. Francis David, you have accompanied several equipment manufacturers who have done the Vortex chapter course in UTI. So you started a year and a half ago from connected objects. Whether it is drilling equipment or fixed equipment, as I mentioned, pumps and fans, there are several. You will be able to relate your experience. But as an expert in information technology or data processing, artificial intelligence when you entered to start working with entire equipment really well established within the industry that in the summer, Your own challenge is to accelerate the understanding of the technical challenges related to the connectivity of objects. What is your point of view? As an IT expert, that's not from the table. You know, in addition to the problems that Benoit has already identified, which are very physical, now you know how it brings people together, how we have energy on it. There is a cybersecurity issue starting to take its place too. And then the equipment such as that has worked, has a great expertise, has good experience in its field, but being able to make drills for 10, 15, 40 years does not necessarily allow you to have a good understanding of how to secure access to your equipment once it is connected to the network. And even once you understand it, to have discussions with the relevant stakeholders at your customers. How do you convince a cybersecurity department of a mine that your equipment won't be a problem for them? It takes a certain level of expertise that is not innate by a typical manufacturing company. That's one of the challenges, then one of the lack of education, then of continuous improvement is a small puka.se is happening to customers. Then on the other side, the other challenge is technical but who also lives well in the Alpes procedure. Operational is the sharing of information between systems. Then another. We were talking about the internet. Objects, a connected object, it's not so much about interconnection, it's about data that it will generate. Will start to take on value. Once you're putting it in context, I'm going to take the terms you used earlier. To get the information from your system, you will be able to attract better conclusions, better understanding. It's the information from the systems, which are in the equipment environment. The equipment environment of the equipment. It comes down to breaking down information silos. It comes down to sharing data from one manufacturer to another in 5 areas, mines. Then that's when once it all broke, well, that's it. I think David can start to do a little more magic with the result of all this. And David, what are you telling us to make the yes Ben? To continue a little bit on this. I think that we talk a lot about taking out the data and then taking it away. Then doing something in the cloud or whatever. But there is also if we have a system that makes a prediction. Well, we have to bring the information back to the end to have our interface on the machine. That is also a complexity. Do we do it on the spot? Do we do it in the cloud news? How we do the measurements, up-to-date updating of these systems, it adds complexity. I think that the biggest element is also that there is a change in culture. Often move from an approach, where do we sell devices, we sell equipment, the relationship around a service, probably as a result of maintenance, etc. Now I'm going to bring value. Maybe every minute, maybe every second to my client. So we have to change the way and then see the data that this may be the new source. My new service that I will offer. That's where there's a little bit of work too, a lot to do on. How can we change mindset? Poos.se say now what we want to bring as new value to our customers. It's not maintenance, it's predictive maintenance. This is it. Where there are really steps to take. Then we often have to structure the organization around that. Then it also goes through the management team to understand what the opportunities are. What is it like? There is work to be done at this level. No. We talked about the relationship with the entire facilities, equipment, education, but on the side of the mining companies, the mini operators, when we talk to them about information technology, what is the receptivity you see to the interest of the eliminated industries industry in relation to digital technologies, connected objects, and others? Well, the interest is there. Then I think that Etienne's comment earlier was or at the end of the medical conference was good. That is to say that there is a receptivity, but you often have to go with a problem-solution approach. So if you approach with these technologies, you really have a concrete problem with a solution ready, or almost, ready for the mines. Well, there's a lot more listening because you know, it's not necessarily up to them to take the risk of developing a solution. They will participate, they will give feedback. But there must still be one very good understanding of the problem that is going to be addressed. Then how we intend to solve it so that it flows better. And then that it goes well because there is everyone. This is the case for everyone, but especially in the mining industry. The lack of human resources, the lack of time to link to these projects is quite great. So it has to be concise and continuous. Thank you Hugo for your entire equipment when you have Bibits TIQUI.SE knocking on your door to show off their technology. How do you receive this and what? Well, how do we see it? Project we're working on. The automation of drill pipes, there were hardware risks and hardware risks. So we tried to reduce the hardware risk as much as possible. EN.SE putting with 111 robotics experts. I think that cheaper than my colleague in the show we should talk to, about 20 robotics farms. So it's important for us to surround ourselves with the right people. It's not just a project like that. You can't just do everything from A to Z, so for us it was really important to reduce the hardware risk. What do I think we have Fay10.se putting with experts and then having a baby robot that is very well known. So the software part, that's what we're focusing on right now. Well, in this way we should have taken risks, that's how we propose it to the industry. Excellent, thank you. Let's continue our exploration in data management. 101. We have seen that the data is emitted by devices that go mobile, fixed equipment, etc. So how do you create value with data? Here you have a diagram that characterizes the categories of data, the state data. Is my equipment healthy? Productivity data. Is the equipment performing? According to the performance indicators of the operating process. Inside, dukelils.se deploy, give, geolocation. We have seen the example of Ragland again. Safety data. Once again, the presentations were quite eloquent. QUI.se launch how to create value with data. It's one. It's digital. It's stadium. It's intangible. But how do you make it as tangible as a product so that it can support a value proposition and generate sales for a PMEQUL1.se launch? Well, I can go. Everyone has the value of hesitating a little. But well, I would say that we still have to start from there. What is the basic problem? What is the problem we are trying to solve with the data? And then to succeed in bringing it into a state of understanding for the people who will have to make decisions with this data. So from the moment that the data is intelligible to the people who will use it, going to use it. For example, if we take into account the operations, well, it becomes simpler. And a good example of this is, for example, if we make a system of thickness loss measurements, liners in the scraps. Here, I'm trying to find the term in French, but where parts in the scraps. And then, of course, the data we bring back is the loss of thickness. But the loss of thickness for a person in production, probably it doesn't mean anything to him at that time. But if we put this data on top, a tonnage that has passed since the start of production of the shoot, but we are able to say, well, there are 300,000 tons left, for example, who can pass. It's a random figure there, 300,000 tons that can pass before you have to replace the fall. So it's really about understanding what problem we're going to solve, then bringing it in and making use of this data so that it's consumable by the people who need to make decisions with this data. Fred, I'll continue a little. You know, I think it's also a lot in the data. There's information that resides, and that's what we're going to extract. Then there are so many data sources that it's difficult for a human to process all this information, or extract the information that is relevant. And then suddenly we do it with an information system. Well, it's to be able to say, what can we bring? Your example is super good to humans. And to contextualize them in a language for him makes sense. Then who is able to make an informative decision if we bring the IA into all this? Well, the idea is often the IA, what do we want to do? That is to say, it is complex to be able to predict the tonnage that remains. Let's put the wear and tear of predicting the wear and tear that will be added to a system that will improve the quality of the information that is extracted, or of having another system that is added that can give advice, for example, to make description, to bring quality finally to the human who is trying to make a decision there, because at its core, it's the network of a problem. So it's not a technological solution, and no one who has an IOIA problem, a data problem, there's a problem. Business who wants to solve with technology. Sometimes, not all the time, sometimes, it's a process. It's a process, absolutely. Sometimes it's the people, sometimes exactly, sometimes. But I can do a little bit of what you say, create value with data. I'm going to go back to good product development practices. You know, it's creating value, it's one thing, but we don't necessarily want to create it at all costs or create it every time. It is from the difference between I have data, I have an idea of products that I can make. I can go to create value for my customers, and then measure the value that is really created in the customer. It's one of the end users rather. This is one of the factors to really take into account when the time to create value. I will take the path what is there was said earlier about Ben, what is my God enough? What's the 80% that I can get quickly once I have it may not be hard to go and get all the bells and whistle everywhere. And it's what we often see in projects or what we have experts with our clients who know their field, who know it inside and out. Then the most murderous sentence, it's yes, now a little. I know what the guy wants. Yes, I know what the user wants in the end. So if you want to create value, which is like you have to manage to get around this first reflex. and then get the fastest feedback possible. It's a big part of the OTI. It's still software. The soft party does KCA.SE easily modifies when it's done well. You have to take advantage of it for this value. You know Benoit's example of I don't want a thickness of lining. I want tonnage. It makes the technology or be their expressor of the earning. Date of when will the lining be finished? But maybe not. You know, but you have to put it in the hands of the guy from the operation as soon as possible to avoid putting a cut of 10,000 in development that is useless there. How do we use processes to contextualize data and clearly define customer needs? Well, there's a human behind each process. He works inside it, and it's important. It's important to popularize the information that is going to be worked on. Because if we don't understand what we're going to look for as a given, well, we won't succeed in mobilizing people in our project. So that's important to do that. Then from there, to do a good training, then to make people understand at all levels. Whether it's corporate to operations, when we talk about data, it has to start from the same thing. So you were talking, Benoit, there, about the fall liners. Well, it's the information or the data is not seen in the same way depending on the languages in which you place yourself. So it's important that we all go together. A common understanding and then a single direction when we do this. Okay, but now I'd really like to take it one step further. We want to add value to data. The data that is valued must meet a need. We have mining manufacturers, we have entire equipment, IT experts. What is the common language of all these people? The common language must be created. Then the language we should use is language. Jean-Philippe said it about the end user. What does he have in his hands on a day-to-day basis? That's what it's called, an apple. We're going to call it an apple until everyone knows about it. This is the software developer. He called it Apple because it's better to speak in English. Well, it's up to him to adapt. It's the business field that has to win because we've had this understanding for years. What is the common language of our stakeholders? Marjorie. I see, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. This is the mining process mapping that we did with MISA. Now I'm plugging it there because the mind map is a product that has taken a year and a half to develop. But after that, you're able to go and grab the data in the right places with the right indicators. So we have this as a product that is unique. And that brings people together, that federates the entire mining industry. Therefore, documented mapped processes allow the mining manufacturer to clearly define its needs, to measure the gap on a digital transition. It is up to the entire equipment to speak the language of the mini operator, and it is up to the IT expert to understand the know-how of the united operator. Is that exactly excellent? Well, thank you for giving points for the answer to Hugo too. Maybe black is not bad, did you want? No, but that's because Hugo also said money. It's true that it's not true. The common language of, okay, that's it, that's what I had my unconscious. This information. So let's continue. There, the challenge of data management you have represented here on the screen, the data management value chain. And before I start interpreting his diagram in French, I'm going to need your help on this. I would like each of you to position yourselves within this chain. Jean-Philippe, I think, well, it's automatically captured. Capture. Because we position ourselves with the mining companies directly in the field to capture, and then codify everything. Whole process, is what I can suggest. Another element of answer. You can go is an expert in mapping of the operation process. Hugo. As a piece of equipment, you know, it would be the connected device. You're at the beginning of the chain, right? Benedict.
Benoit? Moi, je dirais que c'est majoritairement l'ensemble de l'œuvre, mais plus particulièrement
well,
de capturer.
I would say that it's mostly the whole work, but more particularly there to capture to the point of sharing a lot, obviously, with the connected device. Okay, I wish I had that answer myself. No, but... Yes, but I find that it has remained focused on your core business. It's okay, I think. You did the painting well, you put a lot in blue. The part where Excel accepts is from the capture to the security of the data that has been referenced. It is the beautiful that touches us the most. So you are experts in data management. Information technology throughout the chain, infrastructure technologies, data management. That's it, because often we see it as a bit of a pipe, then the connectivity with the other systems. That's the expertise that we approach, that we bring. The OEM often has the best understanding, then the best access to this data there. How can we make an application? How can we integrate it? How can we present it to the end user? Okay, David, where are you in there? Well, in fact, everything that is the valorization part given. That's really where we intervene, capturing us, transporting data, no idea. How to do that is not what interests us. We could succeed in doing it, but we are not good at it. We really focus on analyzing and processing, then using, sharing, applying, and then helping organizations know what to do, value the data. What is unique about the data value chain is the range of science, technology and expertise that must be mobilized to bring a connected object business solution. Do you have the experience of that through Vortex? How? How do you succeed in bringing a connected object solution? How do you work with OEMs to be able to have a business solution that meets all the challenges of data management? Well, it takes a team there. There isn't an individual, even with us, country, who is able to say, I have mastered all the amazing outcomes of each of these stages. So having a team that lights up, that works together, that's the key. The team is part of both end-user OEMs and developers, manufacturers as the developers, so the key to success has just been the organization of this work, then the collaboration of all the people to involve. Thank you, Benoit. Tell us about your experience with the ongoing Vortex IoT project on your reference. To the wear and tear of the parts in relation to the expertise and technologies required to bring a viable solution. What is your experience as an integrator? Well, it is. I'm not sure I understand the question exactly in that context, but we've covered a lot of all these aspects. And we're not. Yes, there's the team, and I absolutely know. But there is also the ecosystem required to succeed, to be a partner to succeed in carrying out all this. Because there are a lot of challenges. We're on the mining site, we must have access to. After that, it's collaborating with the IT in place also for the implementation of the system. And to validate each of these boxes, one after the other, to make sure that we really come. Solve the problem at the end and then bring value there, so that would be my answer. Excellent answer. Validate all the boxes, Hugo. Boxes, if you had to thumb up on the Benoit's last comment. Of Benoit, you're at the top left, but if you're your connected object, drilling equipment makes the most of data. It must bring business solutions that we see at the bottom. How do you manage this internally? Well, I think it's a great advantage that we had to work with you with Vortex. If we were able to go and see our potential customers, to offer a projet pouce.se, make people say it's going to look good or not. You know, we weren't trying to put significant resources into it. Then in the end it leads to nothing. So it's really been a big advantage to work with you. And also, well, as I said earlier, it's important to surround yourself with the right people. Don't be afraid to knock on doors. There's always an expert somewhere. So it's really important to surround yourself with the right people there. Networking is a must to bring connected object business solutions to the market. Yes, 100%. On the mining side, what are the challenges? In relation to this value chain that we have to meet to interest them? Jean-Philippe, you are an expert in cartography, but you also have connected object solutions that you work on. Mining companies are receptive to your solutions. Well, the miners are receptive, but we have a problem. Because the information of the difficulty to be shared between the equipment manufacturers and then mining companies want to have the information for operational data to be able to make decisions. Without more predictive than reactive, while equipment manufacturers will want to protect their intellectual property. So there is a major challenge there to try to harmonize together, to be able to share information, to move forward. IAT, we were talking about it at 12 p.m. I think this story of data sharing, then contextualization of data. What I'm able to see is that there are a bit of two types of equipment manufacturer. You know, there are the very big ones who are trying to conquer the world each on their own, and then you are to give the Microsofts their everything goes through them. Then they are able to do everything, who have a history of closing everything. We have a lot of more players, more specialists, you know, who have, without wanting to break the ambitions of G4, I'm pretty sure that one of them will pass the drills to become a complete mine operator. Maybe it's not in the planet 5 years, you know. So it's a nice way, I think, to stand out. Which is to say that being more open than the big players to create value with several partners or several more specialized players should be one. It's an opportunity that I think Quebec then Misery is well placed to play this game, to marry these people. It is to marry these expertise to seek more value. Then, if I count the cuts of projects that have passed through the vortex, there are the Arcus projects with Neuramine, which aims a lot at you know who is based right on that. That is to say, to promote the exchange of data, and then to do it in a way that cybersecurity will be happy when it is done. So you know, there's a trend that Sembleviewulwar.se draw on that side. I think it has a future. Hugo, how receptive are mining companies to innovative SME solutions? Quebec's mineral sector of connected objects is, I would tell you, it's a job in. Often it goes well with the operators, but where does it bug? But when will it be in poker? So, in a sense, industry has pushed for innovation, but the Excel file. You still have to go through the Excel file. That's the reality we live in, all honesty. We have great players, and so forth, which are increasingly moving forward with solutions. Calls it holistic. Is there a place for innovative SMEs? Our Quebec integrator equipment in this IoT market, how do you see that? Well, I'm going to give my opinion. We have 30 seconds for you there. That precisely that, yes, there is a place. But the place is not to go edone against these great players, it's to play these specialties. Then on the specificities. Then on the opening up with the rest of the industry. I think it's a key factor that differentiates the plus from the biggest. Indeed, then I even start. Well, in any case, it's not all the players, but I'm starting to have the opposite tendency too. Big players to start opening up because they see that it can become a bit of a problem. The mining companies, well, those with whom we have worked so far, are still showing a desire for autonomy with their data, and therefore to have control over their own data because they have teams who will start working with this data internally. And then have equipment manufacturers or big players keep this data internally for themselves or make it more difficult to access the data, to process the data. But it becomes a hindrance even for future purchases or these things. So there is a small change, of course, at this level too. Then it gives you an opportunity to join this ecosystem. Will I also buy the tea? I think that's one of the issues we see. It's often the big players trying to do fetal one size, because it's been the fun. Now it costs less. Then everyone is able to buy it. But one size fit all doesn't make anyone in the end. Then Ben finally would like to. What we see is that everyone will own the data to be able to personalize and then say, well, processes are like this. My software is like this. Well, we can help you get that extra step that is missing. I will give a good example. Co-driver, everyone pretty much used, that's cool, but everyone wants to have it customized. Well, pour.se to get to a customization, it's not Microsoft that will do it to you. Microsoft doesn't have the means, but not the team in place to be able to offer you this. So it's going to be other players who will be able to put themselves in the scene and then be able to offer this customization there. So that's where I think it goes from personalities, collaboration, customization. Then to understand the market, which can be more difficult than one size Vita. That's it. I'm going to come back to what Benoit was saying. When you start to see the players reopen a little, give them a little more. If we put ourselves in the shoes of the big manufacturers, as I say, the approach of I will conquer the world, despite my competitors and their, at some point, you start to have leaders who are close to their goal. Then you have 3-4 players who see that they won't arrive or that they change their priorities. So the strategy of opening up a little bit more, and then creating a marketplace, creating a platform to attract players to their existing systems. It's an interesting way for them to catch up with the competition. OU$.se put further into the ecosystem without, and that will cover the development costs each for them. Fact KCA.se see elsewhere. You weren't winning the race, you're changing the rules of the game. Well, you were talking about opportunities for the smallest players. If there are already solutions, who is connected or equipment that is there, that is able to take that tank there, and then participate in that ecosystem without developing the entire system, but it's another possibility of another strategy that is a win for all the players involved there. Hugo, do you work on connected equipment? For you, what does data ownership mean? And how do you see it? I would say that data ownership, for us, is important to use it, and then really to optimize our operations with it. But for that to happen, you need a certain amount of expertise. Then I think that this is a factor to consider for an SME. So I see myself a little bit in the future, the workforce for us, is it going to be more technicians, fewer drillers, it's discussions that we have internally, and I think it's getting a little bit in line with that. You bet. Your customers react to your mining or exploration customers when you talk to them about your connected object project. What is their concern or their first question when they talk about the data emitted and the ownership of this data as the market reacts? Well, often there are with our potential customers that we have spoken about. There is one YA good feedback. But I think that on our side at vavrayment.se develop when we approve. The technology works in the mining world. I don't like to say that there, but everyone wants to be second, no one wants to be first, so once that's proven, well I think we're going to prove ourselves in a certain way, and then it's going to come down there. Yes, it's for all the data that is created equal either. Okay. What I mean by that is that I'm going to take the example I'm extrapolating a little bit. We haven't worked together, but I think the data that is available on the drill will apply. Have a different interest for different stakeholders. It is to know the data more engineering of oil temperature, amount of power to use or the number of meters forest. Well, it's not the same people who are interested in this data. So sharing the number of meters of forest or the operator's time shifts with the mining companies is a craving. Then there's a use case behind that. On the other hand, to share. I'll take the example of the temperature of the oil. I don't think very body. It's not very compromising. Well, it has no value for the mining industry necessarily. But if you want to make sure you optimize your equipment engineering, it's the information that is relevant to have. And the discussions we have with people in the industry. I have zero problems letting information out to my equipment manufacturers. It gives me value after the fact that sharing the number of meters of forest that I study you anyway. As long as I have access to it. With Miniere, I'm happy. If you want to have your oil temperature, well, I want to know that you have it to understand being able to defend the setup I did. But I don't need to have it in my system. I don't need to track down the fact that it exists without having the values. That's what we see in the industry. Okay, so there's an opening to data sharing. Is that what you're telling me? Yes, we hear that there is a benefit there, it's nuanced. Data sharing. Then the free for all. It's not because I have shared data that I give you the keys to the house with us. It just has to be done in a constructive way. And how do we manage security in this? But security requires transparency, and then being able to apply this security. But above all, being able to demonstrate how it has been applied. Since cybersecurity people see this information, I'll come back with the example of a vortex. There's a project. The related project that's dedicated to this kind of use case. Because there is someone who wants a market elsewhere, and it's not just me who invented it. David, an expert in artificial intelligence or for you access to data, and the mayor of war. That's where you have fun. How do you perceive the industry? What are the challenges of the mining industry in terms of data sharing and access? Of course, these fans who are not available in an Excel file. But there's always a way to start somewhere, You have to be realistic here. That organizations will start a first step. Then sometimes it's going to be an Excel file. It will even be PDFs when the dons vonte.se find them. Then you just have to find ways to be able to function in an environment. Where are their legacy systems? Are there cybersecurity systems in place? There is governance. There are many things. So it's about working with people who are ultimately able to render the data, who are able to give it back to us in a safe way so that we After that, our work can really start working. Then it goes with collaboration with customers, with suppliers. We are not cybersecurity experts. We use cybersecurity systems, and then we just make it work with it. Then sometimes it limits the scope of the project. And this is the reality. There's a word on the slide that I'd like to explore, pooling. Sometimes it's scary, sometimes what does it mean to share data? Well, it's an available annuity accessible to many. It doesn't mean that your life somewhere, that everyone can access the internet. It just means, for example, that we can be 2 or 3 companies together that decide to pool this in a computing system and then that we want to put together. What could be data that does not necessarily quan.se often competes. This is where we will have the interest of mutualization, but which together allows us each to extract value that would otherwise be difficult to do on our own. For me it's a lot, that's a lot. You know, we're going to now have tonnage data that have been extracted, but it can be other things. In the end, systems that often fail. Then how could we together have a bigger set of data to better maintain the system, or better predict the maintenance of the system? You have no real impact for how much we enter them in. Well, it doesn't impact profitability but not how good we are. You smell more gold or it doesn't matter what material you extract. Put together to put them in touch. Well, maybe we'll extract the most relevant information that everyone will gain, but which is not a competitive advantage in itself. It's often there that I go to see meditation. It's an auxiliary system. And then maybe to talk about a past experience without naming too many details. We had designed a system in which all customers could share their data on one opt-in option to say, there is a sharing of personalized data that allows us to do a mass analysis of this data, and then to bring additional value. So we were able to say, what data are we going to? What are we going to use to do? Then what will it give? Well, from then on, customers had the choice to embark or not to embark at the time in this product. I think it's also a great way to manage risk, which is to say here are the inputs that we're going to use. Here's what it's going to give you, what you take on board or not, and here's what the strength of the group allows you to have. So it still allows you to develop competitive advantages, but with the cost of sharing a certain portion of our data in a personalized way. Yes, maybe just to buy I think too. There has to be a multiplier effect. Yes. If individually we reach such and such a sum, and then the sum of all our pooling gives no more than the sum directly, well there will be no advantages, no modifiers. That's what there is just to be added to the need to share this data, be made in pooling this data. It's not the open bar, it goes through depersonalization, the digitization of data. It can also go through temporalization, you know. Last year's data does the job but is less critical. It can be what is shared. It can be what is shared, so that it comes back to the value that is created by this pooling, by the people who contribute to the project. It is necessary when this loop is demonstrated. Ben Hugo said it earlier there, money speaks so that there is a better receptivity. After that, you need cybersecurity departments that are in solution mode. And then not in mode, it's easier to say no. You found that I ramble, but I ask the same question again. Be able to make the most of shared data. You need processes that are not uniform, but that can be compared. Okay, to measure the gap and give well the data emitted by different processes of different mining companies must be comparable if we want to mutualize. How do you see that? Yes, for sure if you want to measure something correct to compare. But in a context where we want to have, we will have data to be able to work. I think it takes a certain standard. We have to stay the course on this. Excellent. Let's continue Harryland to our conclusion, the autonomous mine. A concept that you have blithely heard about in the context of Vortex when you look at the autonomous mine. It has nothing to do with technology. It has to do with how to operate a mine. So today, obviously, we have been in a well-established reality of mechanized operation processes since 2019. We see that there is more and more automation. So instrumentation controls equipment and we are moving towards robotization and autonomy. When I talk to you about autonomy, what does it mean to you?
Pour ma part, je pense que c'est une direction
Well, but for my
naturelle
part,
avec,
you know,
le cours
I
des
think it's
choses,
a
donc les
natural
technologies
direction with the
nouvelles
course of
véhicules
things.
autonomes,
So
tout
all
ça.
the new
Par contre,
technologies,
je pense que
autonomous vehicles and all that on the other hand, I think
complètement
that.
autonome, je
The
la vois
goal
quand
of a
même dans un
completely
futur
autonomous
plus
mine,
éloigné. Il va y avoir
I
beaucoup de
still see it
tâches,
in the more distant
plus
future.
dangereuses, plus
There will be a lot
répétitives
of
qui
more
vont être
dangerous,
remplacées.
more
Ça va
repetitive
nécessiter
tasks that will
nécessairement
be
moins
replaced.
de
It's
ressources,
necessarily
donc
going to require fewer resources, which we
en moins
have.
grande quantité, donc c'est positif.
In
Ça
less
va
large
permettre
quantities,
aussi, je
so it's
crois,
positive.
une
Then it will
automation
also
plus
allow,
simplifiée qui va nécessiter
which
peut-être
will
moins
allow,
de
I
connaissances
believe a
pointues,
lot,
donc
a
ce qui
more
va permettre
simplified operation that will
d'avoir des
perhaps require
opérations
less
peut-être
specialized knowledge. To
plus
have
allégées
operations can be
et
more
un
lighter.
contrôle à
Then
distance,
remote control
mais
more, but
complètement
completely
autonome,
autonomous. I don't see
je
it
le vois pas
fully yet.
encore totalement pour l'instant.
Just to give a little thumbs up on what you're saying there.
C'est sûr qu'il y a des processus qui vont être un peu plus durs
Of course, there are processes that will be a little harder to autonomize, so they will remain essentially safer. So there will be a human element that will stay behind that. We will have no choice but to have a share of. Semi-mechanized, semi-automated, then and factually empowerment for what is really is, that adds value to the process or takes away the risk there. In our operations, there you go. I'm referring to a cut of a project we did this year. And you know, to have an autonomous mine, there is a large part of the deportation, the operations that can be done, especially on the surface. But the techniques, then the strategies, then the modes deoperation pour.se, rendrella.se, transpose. Deporting services elsewhere than 1 kilometer underground to, you know. I'll come back with concrete examples of vortexes that ethology, what a bit of Bijoklusik puts in place, which makes it possible to simplify the data collection hatch everywhere to centralize the expertise after. It is this remote operation that makes it possible to bring the autonomy of the mines closer together, but also allows great business opportunities of, instead of sending my expert in Africa, for a week, I am able to get 4 projects done while they stay in the office. Here, it creates interesting opportunities for companies that get on the wagon. The downside of, well, it's that internationally too. There are people who can take this turn and then come and operate here in our playground. Okay, so. The gradual implementation of process autonomy leads to an outsourcing of process control. With the stakes. It is we who control our mining operations here and elsewhere, or it is elsewhere who controls operations elsewhere and from here. Is what you are telling me? Well, I say we don't want that, but yes, that's what I said. Okay, do you agree with this reading? Yes, that's a long time. Comment, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. This is where we see how the UT, which is there, beginning of the chain, opens up a new world with competitive stakes KVONTE.SE redefine as an entire equipment how you see it. That? Do you have to operate equipment on the other side of the world with your objects more and more, your equipment more and more connected? Oh yes. I think that in the medium term, if you will, because if we're talking about 2030 then I think it's important to start there. You know, it's not something we're going to do in a snap of the fingers. But yes indeed, it's something that we have to operate remotely in the future. Okay, and it's going to change the competitive stakes. Your relationship with your competitors? Yes right. You know us as an equipment manufacturer and then an operator, Ben. For us, it was important to follow the wave if we didn't want to be the drillers at the bottom of the mine who don't follow, you know, it's the whole mine is automated. Well, it's important for us to follow there. From what you know about the mining industry in Quebec, do you think that? The mining industry here can develop technologies that would allow us to be the leader in this opportuniteska.se is on the horizon. Do you have faith in us? Absolutely. Absolutely, here I am. You speak for the group, I speak for the group. And are present in this case. We have brains here in Quebec, we have experienced people, we have mining expertise. I don't see why we would ask the outside world to do what we are capable of doing at home. Yes, and did I already tell you a business cup? We LA.EU this discussion there. You know, by being active in other sectors than mining. UCCEqui.se goes into Lenergy.IEIL.se, Voigt.se goes into agriculture. The mining ecosystem is so much more user-friendly to make this innovation. And to push this technology, I believe in it much more in mining than in other spheres of activity. Or is it more nutty? Isn't there such a good federation of people on a common long-term interest? Yes, I believe in it very much. For those lookers, excellent. Well, I just wanted to say, I believe that we can have a serious impact. But it's so global and it's so sprawling that it's going to come from everywhere too. I think so. Just have to master it well. Then keep the knowledge here. Then encourage it too. The development here to allow then bravo. Are you doing this? I mean, it contributes to that. Well, thank you. See, we have in the last hour explored a universe that is completely new, even in any industry. We see the panoply of expertise that must be mobilized, knowledge to be able to position oneself on this. It is a world that has just given the starting gun, and the autonomous mine may say so. An outing editorialiva.se be made in the next 10 or 15 years, and why not have the first autonomous mine Omandi.se take place in Quebec? And the Quebec technologies that have made it possible to do this will be exported after everyone else, all over the world. This is the ambition that we hope we share. Hence the strategic importance of the concept of autonomous men. Thank you very much for your contribution. We explored a lot of avenues. It's a world in the making and still to be defined, so solutions are being worked on. Ardently in, and we want to see them appear in the next few years with Vortex at UT. I hope. Thank you for applause for our candidates.